Welcome to Life After 40 Conversations with Philip Blackett. This is a space for honest, thoughtful conversations about midlife, without the hype, without diagnosis, and without pressure. If you're somewhere between 35 and 55 years old and quietly navigating questions about your energy, your identity, your work, your faith, your relationships, or your health, you're not alone. Midlife can often look stable on the outside and feel unsettled underneath. Life after 40 conversations exists to do one thing well: to give adults in midlife the language, the clarity, and the calm perspective for a season that can often feel confusing, lonely, or silently overwhelming. This show exists to help you feel seen, help you feel steady and less alone as you navigate the second half of life. Now, bear in mind, this is not a self help program, it's not a medical show, and it's not a motivational pep rally. What this is a meaning making space. Each episode is a grounded conversation with myself, alongside with leaders, caregivers, entrepreneurs, pastors, parents, professionals, and thoughtful human beings who are living through midlife in real time, just like you and me. We reflect on lived experiences without issuing prescriptions with peer pressure. Because I believe in this deeply, midlife is worth living and worth living well. And living it well does not start with pressure, it starts with perspective. So if you ever thought to yourself, why does this season feel different? Or why am I rethinking things that used to feel settled before? You're exactly where you're supposed to be. And I'm grateful that you're here. So, with that, let's begin today's conversation. Our guest today is Belinda Coker. She is an Australian hiker, writer, and educator who helps women in midlife reclaim freedom and confidence through practical, real world adventure. After years of building businesses and raising three children, she began hiking to find space and perspective, completing multi day solo hikes from Australia's rugged Red Centre to a solo crossing of Greenland in the Arctic Circle. Along the way, she founded Soul Treader, a space that helps women push their limits safely and rebuild confidence through real adventure. Drawn on that same philosophy, Belinda later created the House Sitting Collective to teach responsible, flexible travel that is safe, organized, and built on trust. She has also worked with local communities in Malawi and Zambia on self funded clean water projects, bringing safe water closer to villages where women once walked hours each day. Belinda is also a lipodema warrior, encouraging women to move forward in whatever body they are in. Belinda, welcome to Life After 40 Conversations.
Thank you, Philip. It's lovely to be here.
Absolutely. So happy to get started here. So, really, the first question I'd love to learn more of, we just shared your introduction with the audience. And
Hmm.
so, when we think about midlife for you in this season, before the titles, before the resume, before the introduction, who is Belinda in this season of life?
So, uh, Belinda, this season of life is completely different to the Belinda 5 years ago. And that was the day that I was looking in the mirror. And it could be the proverbial mirror, it could be a literal mirror, it doesn't matter. I was taking a good, hard, long look at myself. And right now, Belinda is very happy. She's settled. She's peaceful. I'm doing something that I absolutely love. The only thing missing out of my life is grandchildren, but I know when grandchildren come along, I will be returning to suburbia, house, and, and life in general. Um, For those who, for those who don't know me, I decided when I was 55 years old that I no longer wanted the life that I had right then and there, and I needed to do something because I was not in a good space. And so I made some drastic changes, and that evolved organically into the life I lead now. And the life I lead now, I travel around the world experiencing other cultures. I hike all over the world. I do some great hiking. I turned 60 on the trail late last year, and I've never been healthier, both physically, mentally, and just physically and mentally healthier. I'm just, apart from the lurgy I've just had, but that's, I don't think I've been sick for 5 years. So I mean,
Mhm.
it's that sort of life that I feel so fulfilled now. Hmm.
Absolutely. That's great to
Uh,
hear.
yeah,
And so when you think about midlife, and so I usually share with the audience, I think about midlife, particularly between 35 to 55 years old.
yeah,
And it sounded like on the tail end of that for you, that was where a significant change happened.
that's right.
So love to learn more about that as you feel comfortable sharing. When did you first realize something had shifted for you in midlife?
Uh, I think it was in the last decade of the midlife, if we're going to put those bookends on it, and the lead up to that day when I looked in the proverbial mirror is because I was I had divorce, I had all sorts of other sort of personal issues. They weren't sort of issues, they were happenings or events that sort of compounded how I felt when I reached menopause. And I think I took quite had menopause a lot later than a lot of other women. But they say that midlife and is very similar. Adolescence is very similar to adolescence. You're going through hormonal changes, physical changes. You're having identity transitions, all sorts of things that you have when you're an adolescent, but it seems to be compounded when you're in midlife and for your midolescence because there's all these other bits and pieces and baggage that you've taken along for the journey. Like as I said before, the woulda, shoulda, coulda. I would have, I should have, I could have. Or you might have an aging parents you've got to look after. You might have a partner who needs constant care, or a wayward child, or you might have experienced death in within family members, and so everything is compounded when we get to this age, and it's almost like a turning point. When I looked in the mirror that day, I really was burnt out. I was totally burnt out. I was stressed, depressed, stressed and depressed, overweight, unhealthy, you name it. I just was not in a good space. I really wasn't. And I had to dig deep and find I had to find joy. I had to find something that would give me joy. And I reached into my history, where I used to go hiking years and years ago, because I grew up in New Zealand, back when I was at school and university, high school and university. I used to hike a lot, and I reached back then. I thought, right, I need to do something. I need to find joy. And that was the start of my transformation. Yeah.
Nice.
Mm.
Nice. So for you, it was hiking. I think for me, it was just a walk around the neighborhood, like
Yeah.
something that kind of changes the scenery, changes
Yeah.
the setting, that oftentimes can lead to something much more substantial as far as your
Yeah.
transformation in midlife. I definitely
Yeah.
respect that. Um, was there something before that hike where you realized something that you used to do at this point now didn't work for you anymore?
Um, I think, um, I mean, I was quite, when I say I was really unfit and healthy, I think I was more mentally unfit and healthy. I was still going to do some yoga. I was still, walking going, I was still doing certain things that I had been doing for a long time, but it was, I think, in my mindset was the most unhealthiest part of me, and I felt I couldn't get out of this hole. Even if I had tried things, I think the hole just felt too deep. That's how I felt. I felt stuck. And it can be, I don't know how it happened. I don't know. I really can't put a finger on it, but my children were all in their final years of high school, or they had left for university. So they had part-time jobs, they had friends, they had parties, they had all sorts of things. And so I was at home, and they would come and float through and then float out on a daily basis. And I missed, I felt I had lost purpose. Uh, Now it's completely different. My relationship with my children has completely changed, 180. But, back then they weren't problem children, but, uh, I felt, I felt, I felt my existence was threatened. Mm,
That's an interesting way of putting it,
yeah.
especially with kids, right? Don't let them take over. So, what do you feel like, and maybe this is it, what you just shared, what do you feel like surprised you the most about this season of midlife for you?
Uh, that before I could just bounce back. I mean, lots of people all throughout my life, my children's father, everyone had sort of always complimented me on the way that I bounce back. You're strong, you can bounce back. And I always believed that I could. And it was just this one time I thought, I just don't have the energy anymore. I really
Mm,
don't. And I think that was it. I just felt, oh, I just felt at a loss. I can't quite put fingers on it, but I just felt at a loss. And I'm assuming that I'm not the only one that feels like that or has ever felt like that. And there was no reason for it. I hadn't, I'd had a few sort of messy events that had happened in my life, but sort of sailed through them.
mhm.
It wasn't like anything, extremely traumatic had happened. So I think I don't think I gave myself much grace either. It was basically, oh, for heaven's sake, pick yourself up, just like, but at the same time, cry like, oh,
Crying and giving yourself a pep talk in the same place. That's quite a picture.
yeah. Mm.
So, and that's interesting too, Belinda, because I think about, to your point, I think a lot of people listening and watching can resonate with where you're coming from, where oftentimes we're told, especially as we get older, the importance of being strong,
Yeah.
at least projecting that on the outside and kind of going through, like you said, the things that we often go through in midlife that can
Yeah.
be pretty challenging, trying to balance and manage it all.
Yeah.
Work responsibilities, your family, whether it's a spouse, kids, aging parents,
Yeah.
maybe all three at the same time,
Yeah.
like new technology, all these other things, relationships changing, coming and
Mm.
going.
Mm.
And in the midst of all that, you still got your health
Yeah.
and that whole recognition that your body isn't as resilient
Yeah.
to bounce back
Yeah.
as you thought it would be, as it used to be back then. And yet, and still, we still have to carry this mask or image, at least, that we have it all together.
Yeah.
And I think that's why these conversations are so helpful,
Yeah.
because it allows people to unmask
Yeah.
and say, listen, when I'm in my house and I'm in my room, I can take the mask off. I realize there's a lot of things I can control and a lot of things are outside of my control.
Yeah.
A lot of things I got a good handle on, a lot of things I'm struggling a little bit. And sometimes I just need to just flush it out and
Yeah.
just cry,
Yeah.
and not have to worry about the inner voice saying, "Hey, for goodness sake, Philip, get your act together."
Yeah. Yeah.
And just say, "Listen, I can acknowledge that this is a tough day, it's a tough moment, and part of the process is like you said before,
Mm.
finding the capacity to be more graceful to
Mm.
yourself."
Yeah.
We're often asked to be graceful towards other people,
Yeah.
and how can you do that and not also be graceful to yourself?
Yeah. There's also a lot of outside influences as well. I mean, the number of people who said to me, oh, whatever, it just makes you stronger. Whatever hurts you makes you stronger. I can't remember what. And you feel, look at them and you feel like saying, why are you even telling me that? Because at the time, that's not what you want to hear. And you see your peers and you see all these other people around you who seem to have it together and but the reality is they don't, they're living this perfect life I think there just needs to be, a lot more grace between other people as well, for what people are going through and for this season in our lives, because it can be very confusing and it can be hurtful and it can be challenging and it can be, it really can be quite a scary time for a lot of people.
I
Mm.
think that's part of the challenge we live in today too, where, you know, growing up, and I'm sure you can relate to this as well to a certain degree, you know, I didn't have social media
Mm.
when I was growing up. Like Facebook for me came like towards the end of college.
Mm.
We were still on flip phones. Like
Yeah.
we were just getting a hold of the internet not too long ago. But even before the internet, you had like a radius of like a couple miles from where you lived, where it's like, okay, where we went to get stuff from the market, where we went to go to school,
Yeah.
and where we went to church, or any of those sort of things where you didn't have that exposure of what other people are doing to the same degree we have now.
Mm. Mm.
So comparison is on like an all-time high
Mm.
where people can just pick up a phone and instantly in seconds find out what's happening in New Zealand,
Mm.
what's happening in Greenland, what's happening in America,
Mm.
friends of yours, colleagues. And of course, everyone wants to put their strong face on.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
I got it all together, face and persona and image aesthetic and all that sort of thing. And I think it's just healthy for people to understand, yes, put your best foot forward, but there's also a story behind the image. A
Yeah.
picture's worth a thousand words, right?
Mm.
Or
Mm.
900 of those words are probably the behind the scenes of what it took to get to that point
Yeah.
if you don't notice. But unless we're able to give ourselves that understanding, hey, like you said, I'm not the only one. And there's something empowering about that because that doesn't single yourself out,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Absolutely.
So for midlife in particular, Belinda, was there something about it that it forced you to stop ignoring something in particular? And what changed once you paid more attention to it?
So the one thing that I did was a huge wake up call for me is that I don't have, I only have 20 years left. Like, okay, at least 20 years left. And
Mhm.
I would like to think that I have at least 20 years left, or at least 20 years of being active. I think, when I turn 80, I'll start being, I'll still want to be active. I mean, my mother's still, she's mid 80s and she still walks for an hour a day. I mean, I hope I'm as active as she is. But
Mhm.
it's just so many people, when they get to that age, that they stop, or they, even when they get to my age, which is 60. But that day that I looked in the proverbial mirror and I decided that I would start to go hiking, I I went out and bought some hiking boots. As I said, I'd hiked a lot when I was younger, and I joined a meetup group. Everyone else on the meetup group was in their 70s or 80s, and I was 55. And it wasn't a long hike. It was maybe 17 kilometers, 12 miles, something like that. But it was down a steep gully and up the other side. And I was just like, and sorry, I shouldn't have done that. I'll get over the cough. And these 70 and 80-year-olds were glowing, and they were fit and they were healthy. And I thought, I want that. That's what I want. I want to be that. And I just thought, well, it was just like they had this inner joy, they'd been sprinkled with happy dust or something, like, and I just thought, well, there is purpose at this age. There is a purpose, there is something that I can do, moving forward, that I can do. This is something I know. I know hiking. I've been, I did wilderness courses and all sorts of things when I was, when I was at school and university. I know this. And so I thought, right, okay, I saw that there was a direction, out of my uh, lament. So say, there was a purpose. There was a purpose, and that was the turning point for me, and that was like the realization that all is not lost. Because we do sometimes feel like, especially depression is a horrible thing. Depression is basically, being upset about what has happened in the past, and it can be quite scary and quite hard to get out of it. And uh, it, doing this helped me immensely. Mm,
Hmm. No, it
mm.
makes a lot of sense. And even when you were with that peer group and you were like struggling to make it, I think what came in my head was just like, listen, remember, they probably didn't start out that way either,
Yeah,
Belinda. They
exactly.
probably had their they probably had their huffing and puffing moment
Yeah,
too when they first got
yeah.
started too. And just over time, you do something with enough regularity, with enough
Mm.
comfort,
Yeah,
things get easier. And
yeah.
so I'm curious, it seems like you made a lot of significant changes that have clearly benefited you,
Mm,
around that 55-year range, as far as
mm.
55 years and older.
Yeah.
Um, I'm also curious if you hadn't made those changes, what do you think it would have cost you if you had not made those adjustments and kind of stuck with how you had been doing things before because you thought, hey, I've done it to this part for this long. I might as well keep going.
Uh, that's a difficult one because, well, it's not, no, it's not difficult at all. Okay, so I would have been doing the same thing. Now I find joy in the simple things in life. Before, I would find joy in material things. I would find joy in a nice meal in a nice restaurant or something like that. How my joy was found with outside influences. And over time, those outside influences dry up. You either get bored with them, or maybe you run out of money. I could have had a life-changing event which would have maybe, you know rendered me penniless, and then I wouldn't be able to substitute, a natural keep substituting natural joy for material joy. I wouldn't have met the love of my life, which I met in my late 50s on a bus of all places. And and it does happen at our age, ladies, and gentlemen. It's all, it does happen. So I wouldn't be the person that I am now. I think I wouldn't
That's
be the
solid.
person I am now.
And it's really helpful too, Blenda, because I think there always comes a risk with change.
Yeah,
They also say that the one thing that is constant about life is change.
yeah.
And so, even in that same sense, deciding the change can be risky, and making the decision not to make a change
Mm,
can be risky as well. And so, I really think that's a credit to you being courageous and saying, "Hey, there's some things that used to fit me. The jacket used to be nice and fit before.
Yeah.
Now it's a little loose, or now it's a little tight, and now I need to try something different."
Yeah.
And being able to leave that one behind and try something new.
Mm.
You may have your huffing and puffing moment trying to keep up with everyone, but I think what it sounds like to me from just hearing your story here, it definitely was a benefit for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when you think about where things are now, what are some of the beliefs, some of the habits, some of the rhythms for you that are now non-negotiable?
Uh, right now, it's looking after my body because now that I've kind of found this life that I'm totally enjoying is knowing that as we age, my body isn't going to renew itself and start getting younger. In my mind, I'm younger, but in my body, our bodies are are in a slow decline. As we head towards the goodbye scene, and and so looking after my body is really important. That's really important. But it's also what is important to me now is enjoying the simple things in life. And I can be I can be sort of, I can remember walking down the street in Italy. It was about 6 months ago, and I just finished a hike. And I was walking down in Torino, and I was walking down the street, and it was one of the back streets, and it was just such a gorgeous little street. There were no other tourists anywhere around, and I just sat there and just be just be just just in embrace what I was surrounded with at that particular time. And I've started to do that a lot now, and whether or not that's in the wilderness or some street in Italy, or even just just it can be anywhere, just a mall, a shopping mall, just watching people, just people watching and just enjoying being part of this great big world that we call life. I mean, we are here to just we're not here for no purpose at all. We're here to be kind to people. We're here to accept smiles and to smile, and you know living life beautifully doesn't necessarily cost much. I think it
Mhm.
really is in your own mind. Yeah.
I like
Mm,
that a lot. One
mm.
of the themes I've gotten from these type of conversations is the fact that when you get to a certain point in time, sometimes the most beautiful things don't cost an arm and a leg.
Yeah, yeah,
It's oftentimes the more simple things are, the more serene and calm they are, the more we appreciate them. You
yeah,
get past the materialistic, the price tag, the prestige, the luxury, and it's just more so just there's just something inherent and just something that's just inherently simplistic
yeah,
and beautiful.
yeah, yeah. Mm,
And so going back to where things are now for you, Belinda,
mm.
what does thriving look like for you now?
Thriving to me looks like it looks like being able, if there are any negative situations coming my way, is being able to handle them in a way that does not affect me emotionally. Like for example, it could be anything. It could be a crossword with somebody, and it's just like, right, okay, it's not me. What is happening in this situation? Or is it something that I'm doing? And if it is something that I'm doing wrong, well, fix it, and not having to take negative situations on in a wrong way, which is harmful to myself or harmful to other people. And that thriving is, and I'm not saying it's not, life is not Pollyanna. We don't, it's not a Pollyanna life where everything is, daisies and roses and milking cows. I mean, life can be very, very messy, and we're going to have curved balls thrown at us all the time. I mean, I could. I could get run over by a bus tomorrow and, end up with no legs. And that could actually happen. You never know. But what I've got to look at is like I've had and will continue up until that day have a great life and do the best that possible that I can in every situation. And I think that that's kind of where I'm sitting at the moment. Mm,
That's beautiful. Um,
mm.
I think that's really helpful, Belinda, just to really help people get a feel for where things are.
Yeah.
And I think the conversation as a whole has been very fitting to that. And so, for people that are watching and listening to us, um, as we come to a conclusion here of our conversation together, if there's someone that's listening or watching that is struggling in midlife, maybe they are drifting, maybe they feel like they got run over by a bus, metaphorically speaking, um, or they're kind of experiencing their own sort of crisis at this point. What would you want them to hear from you right now?
I would want people to know that this too shall pass, because even though that but you do have to do some of the work yourself, and it was very easy for me back in that at that time when I was 55 to go, oh poor me, and I say that, but I know how hard it is to get out when you do have a bout of depression or anything like that. But find joy, find something that will give you joy, and it can be anything. It doesn't have to be going on some amazing hike, across the Arctic Circle in Greenland. It can just be taking up sewing again, or cooking, or spending time with someone you really love, or if you don't have a dog, borrowing a neighbor's dog and taking the dog out for a walk, or something like that. Just anything that will give you joy, because everybody, there is something that will give you joy, and it doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be you know, sensational. It just needs to give you joy, and that's the important thing. Mm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Belinda, thank you so much for sharing this with us today. For those that are listening that want to follow you and your work and where things go from here for you at this stage now, where can they connect with you after this conversation?
So I have two platforms. The first one is my hiking platform, which is soultreader.com. And there I have all my hiking guides. If you want to get into hiking, if you want to get into the great outdoors, I have a lot of guides there on what to wear, what to eat, what to pack in your day pack, all sorts of great stuff. There's also a free resource on there, which is health and safety on the trail, which is totally free, but it's really informative. That's a free resource. If anybody is interested in house sitting, which can also be a fantastic way of traveling and to get yourself out of your situation and go somewhere totally new, even for a short time, which doesn't actually cost you anything and it can have huge benefits. House Sitting Collective, there I teach people how to house sit and what's involved, how to apply for house sits, and everything in between, and how to get the 5-star reviews so that you can do it on a regular basis if you like, because being able to get away is can be very difficult for a lot of people, basically because they might not have anyone to go with and they're uncomfortable going by themselves, or finance might be an issue as well, and that can always be very hard on people who just need to escape their life, even if it's just for a weekend. And house sitting is a perfect opportunity, perfect way to solution. It's a perfect solution. Yeah. Mm,
It's excellent.
yeah.
I didn't even know that house sitting was a thing.
It
So
is a
I definitely
thing.
learned something out of this conversation. For at least one thing for sure, I definitely learned was that I did not even know that.
Yeah, yeah,
So, just as another credit to that, Belinda, thank you so much
yeah.
for taking time with us and our audience to really share your perspective here and how midlife has been for you and the lessons you've learned. And, to everyone listening and watching, let this be a lesson.
Mm.
Midlife isn't necessarily a problem to fix. It's oftentimes a moment to recollect on what's most important to you
Yeah.
and how to give yourself space and grace, um, to really figure out where do you want to go at this point. Some things that were important to you back then, maybe not the same now, and vice versa. Some things that you might have not paid much attention to may mean more important things now, even just the simple and beautiful things, just as Belinda said. So, anything that Belinda has shared with us, if there's something that really spoke to you, helped you clarify some things, really reflect on that. Even take time if you need to just to sit on it, maybe even sit on it while house sitting. Just something where you can give yourself that time, that safe space to really figure out what's right for you at this point, non-judgmental, but really just giving yourself that grace to say, hey, where am I at this point? What makes sense for me as far as where do I go from here? Because I do think that's where real change begins, as illustrated by what Belinda talked about, not with urgency necessarily, but even just with awareness. Okay. So to learn more about Life After 40, you can head on over to our website at lifeafter40.com. You're also welcome to connect with me at philipblackett.com. And just as a friendly reminder as we close, midlife is worth living and worth living well. Belinda, thank you so much for joining us here on this conversation here with Life After 40. Thank you, everyone, for spending time with us and watching. This has been Life After 40 Conversations with Philip Blackett. Thanks so much. Take care, and I'll see you in the next conversation. Bye for now.